Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to you. My name is Richard Orme, and I'm your host for today's webinar, Extended Descriptions in Digital Publications, Best Practices and Practical Advice. Regular attendees of the DAISY webinar series will have benefited from tips and insights for crafting image descriptions. Our expert guides, Valerie and Hugh, have gone well beyond basic images to explore techniques for complex images, tables, charts, infographics, maps, artwork, anatomy, and assessment. And if you missed the previous sessions or want to review the content, then the slide decks, transcripts, and videos are all available on the DAISY website. We've learned that more complex materials need more than the basic alt text, and webinar attendees have asked for help with how to include these extended descriptions in a digital publication. So that's what today's session is all about. I'm sure our presenters will provide us with plenty of answers, and I'm looking forward to the questions. So now I'm going to hand over to our panelists to introduce themselves.
And my name is George Kirscher, Chief Innovations Officer with the DAISY Consortium, and also Senior Officer of Global Literacy with Benetech.
Hello, everyone. This is Charles Lapierre. I'm the technical lead for the Diagram Center and our Born Accessible initiative at Benetech.
I'm Evan Yamanishi. I'm Director of Accessibility and Standards at W.W. Norton & Company, book publisher.
And the overview of today's session will be talking about when alt text is not enough, and we will cover 3 techniques for providing extended descriptions when it's immediately following an image, in the details and summary elements, and in linking to the back of the book and back. And we also have demos of all 3 of those techniques as well. And then we'll be talking about the publisher perspective of things from Evan. So when alt text is not enough, we know that images are required to have text equivalence for the information. But the amount of information provided in a graphic varies wildly. We've got decorative images, which do not require any kind of description. Their role would be presentation, and alt text would be empty, quote, quote. There's images that are well described in surrounding areas, but they are and so alt would also be empty. Alt text is available, and you can put information in there, usually shorter descriptions, and you cannot put markup in alt text. So the images that require extended descriptions might be flowcharts, pictures, infographics, almost all kinds of things. And the extended description can add value certainly for people who are blind and other disabilities, but also for the mainstream population. But it's always provided when the alt text is just not enough room. And many times the HTML markup that you could use would be beneficial. So for example, a pie chart is easily described using table markup. And the extended descriptions can be quite long sometimes, and so paragraphs and other HTML markup is better. And quizzes and tables may need more information. So there's a lot of areas. So moving to the next slide. So we're going to talk about the features and shortcomings of these various techniques. And so if you have a comprehensive description immediately following the image, say in a div, everybody's going to see it. It's going to be there all the time. It can be intrusive, and a mainstream publisher probably wouldn't want to have their beautiful book cluttered with this information that most people don't need. You cannot get past that description very easily. And many times people who can see the image just don't want it. So getting past it is difficult. So moving on to the second technique. So the details element in HTML, along with this associated summary, allows, the summary is just a short description of what's inside the details, and a button is normally presented to expand the details element and present the information that's inside. So it stays hidden, it's just a button until it is expanded. You don't even have to do anything to move past it to start the reading. But one of the drawbacks is not all apps support the details element. And of course, then it's just always expanded. So our final technique, I'll let Charles describe.
So our final technique is linking to an extended description or comprehensive description. So following the image or the image itself could be a link to this extended description, and it theoretically could be at the end of the chapter, but we're in our techniques we're showing that this could be a separate file at the end of the book. All right, and it's easy to follow links to these extended descriptions. It's well known, everyone uses links, and so it's works in just about all reading systems as well. We also, because you're moving away from the current context of where you are in your book, we want to also replicate that image at the end of the book, along with its description. We'll mark that as presentational because you don't need to. You've already heard the alt text description, so but the image is there for reference for low vision users or for cognitive, just support so that you can reference the image while you're reading the description if you're not blind. And then following that description, there will be a link back to where you came from, back into the book. One of the caveats is that some assistive technologies doesn't position you exactly back to the correct spot in the book when you go back. Going forward to the end of the book, you're placed at the top of the file, everything's fine because that's you have one file and description per image, but the linking back could be potentially problematic. So I will...
And before you start your demo, I wanted to mention that most of the time we envision these descriptions to follow the image, but sometimes that helpful information, that extended description, should be positioned before the content. So if you're going to be doing an exercise in a book and you need that information about how to do it clarified, it might be better to put that before the exercise or whatever it is, before the table, rather than after.
Absolutely. So we'll have a few different demos here. We'll actually first show you the comprehensive description following the image in a browser. I'm using Safari on my Mac. And then we'll move on to the summary details in both a browser and then in a couple reading systems, showing it working and showing some of the potential issues, and then also the final technique of linking to the end of the book and backlinking, working and potential workarounds and issues. So with that, I will move over to, here we are in Safari. And this is from the previous webinar, some their examples. Here we have an oil painting, or it's not just an oil painting, with this image, and then following the image we have its extended description right in line. So that is the first technique, and I'll turn on voiceover in a second. I'm going to move down here, and this is the option where you have an image, and prior to the image you have this extended descriptions with a summary details. And here you'll see this there's a little caret here that you can click on to expand the details, and this will push down the image, and the extended description will then appear above the image. So I'll do that, and now I see the extended description and then followed by the image. And if I move further down, I'll show the same idea, but you'll have the image first. Here's a couple of them, complex STEM infographic, and then below that there's again a summary, extended description. You can label that whatever you want. Click on it, and it will bring you the extended description, which in this case is a table. So with these extended descriptions, we can have full markup. You can have table markup, you can have lists, you can have headings, fully accessible. So let me just go back to the top here. I'll turn on voiceover and just show you.
Voiceover on Safari, not.
All right.
You are current a village festival in honor of St. Hubert and St. Anthony image. You are currently on an image.
And now I'll just move past that with my normal navigation keys, right and left, to get to the extended description, which is immediately following the image.
Heading level 3 extended description. An oil painting by Peter Bruegel the Younger entitled A Village.
Okay, so I'm going to skip past this to the next heading.
Heading level 2, take a deep breath. You are.
Okay, and now I'll go down to the extended description, which is right now expanded, but I'll show how to expand and collapse that.
Your respiratory system is the network of organ. Extended description, expanded summary.
So you'll notice that told me it was expanded, and it's a summary. So I'm going to actually just turn that off.
Extended description, collapsed summary. You are currently on a summary inside of web content. To click this button, press caps lock space.
Caps lock is my voiceover key. I mapped it to the caps lock key, but I can, since it's collapsed, I can skip past it like George was mentioning.
A diagram illustrates the main components of the human respiratory system. Image.
And I could then, go back.
Extended description. Extended.
This time I expanded it, and then now when I move forward.
The diagram is a line drawing of the upper respiratory tract. Lists 4 items.
Right, and I get to the extended description. So that's showing it in a browser. And pause there for a second, and before going over to now inside of EPUBs.
Zoom.us, Thorium. Book, Vital Source Bookshelf. Vital Source Bookshelf. Bookshelf window. Extended description using HTML details and summary. Web content as keyboard focus.
All right, so now I'm in Vital Source Bookshelf. This is an app on my Mac, and I've loaded in our test book, actually from epubtest.org, so anyone can download this book, and it shows the 2 main techniques with the summary details and the linking in this book. So I'm going to use this for my examples now. And so let me go into here and get down to the image and then pass that to the summary details.
Select image button. Bar chart showing monthly and total visitors for the first quarter 2014 for expand/collapse extended description. Collapsed summary. You are currently.
So same thing in the browser experience. We have, it tells me what the summary is, the expand/collapse extended descriptions, and now I'll open that up.
Expand/collapse extended description. Expanded summary. Heading level 3. Overview. The chart shows the heading level 3. Data table 4 columns. 5 period. Site 3. Row 2 of the 5th.
So I'm just moving using regular voiceover commands or table keys to navigate this table. It's a full markup table. I'll get to the past this.
Row of end of heading level 3. The bar chart represents both the number of visitors.
And this is all part of that extended summary, and then I can go past it to the rest of the book.
Filler text after the image's summary/details.
So this is showing that it's working correctly. I'm able to expand it. I could also use the mouse to expand and collapse this.
Expand/collapse extended description. Expand/collapse. Expand.
All right. And now I'll show you this not working very elegantly in Apple Books, actually. So if I
Does
move
you
over-
get into that, Charles? I
books.
said
Yes.
that I would maybe jump in with a couple of questions. This seems a good point at which to
Sure.
introduce one. So this is with the expandable and collapsible method you describe. Is this always collapsed when you first come to the web page or the publication and has to be expanded by the user?
That would be the default behavior, although that could be overwritten with JavaScript and potentially could be some user preferences on the reading system side if they implement some of these things, but those are more advanced techniques. But typically, yes, they would be they'd be closed and then you'd have to expand it by default.
That's great. And then there's a supplementary question. How is the expansion done? You talked about it just there, but using the keyboard, the mouse and the touchscreen, could you just explain on the different platforms how folks
Sure.
expand that?
Yeah, so with the mouse, you just click anywhere on that expand/collapse, like the summary, or on the caret itself, the little triangle. That caret theoretically could be used with CSS, change the style of that to make it more whatever you want. With a keyboard, it's basically the space bar, potentially even the enter key. I would think that that would work as well. And then touchscreen, you just touch that expands, the summary, and it will automatically expand and collapse that.
And on Windows, it's a button, and the screen readers, use the B key to go to the next button or previous button. So you just go to that button, press enter. You're reading along in your extended description. And if you want to go back to collapse it, you can hit Shift B and you're on the button, press enter or spacebar, and it would collapse it and report its changed state.
That's great. So you're talking about pros and cons of these different approaches. This sounds fairly intuitive then, in terms you don't need to learn special commands for this. It's pretty obvious when you get to it. Does that sound right?
Beginning to see it more and more on the web and HTML, where you want to buy something and it says learn more details, and same technique is being used, and we're just applying that HTML element, which is introduced in HTML5 version 5, for these extended descriptions. And I personally like this technique very much, and it works really well in many places.
Great, thanks for that. We've got some more questions queued up, but Charles, you're about to do a demo, I think, in Apple Books.
Yes, so let me move over to that.
Books, accessibility test.
Now, books and VoiceOver, surprisingly enough, don't behave very well together. And hopefully I can show this. I might have to turn off VoiceOver. It's just, okay, yeah, there you go. I was just, let's try this.
Heading level 2 the link.
I'm going to move down to the image where I was. It just jumped me back to the beginning of the, actually, you know what? I'm just going to turn it off.
VoiceOver off.
It's not worth it. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to click on the expand summary details. Theoretically, it should expand and you should be able to see the entire details, but unfortunately you don't. It gets cut off, and then when you try to move to the to the next page to see it, it's gone. You don't see the entire details. So that's it. And even with VoiceOver, it'll start reading and get to the, the overview and start reading other sites, but the number of, and then it'll cut off right there and then jump you to the next page. So this is a case where it's not behaving very nicely and you lose the context. So this is in Apple Books right now. So it's a bug in Apple Books, and VoiceOver doesn't really work well. So we wouldn't even recommend books for VoiceOver Mac users, and instead the VitalSource Bookshelf or the Thorium would be our recommendations. So I will now show you with, go back to Bookshelf here, and I'm going to now show you the other technique, the final technique on extended descriptions with the linking to the end of the book. So let me turn on VoiceOver.
VoiceOver on VitalSource Bookshelf. Bookshelf window. Skip back. Extended descriptions using links to separate HTML file containing and extended descriptions using links to separate HTML file containing single description. Web content heading level 2. Notes about techniques.
So I'm going to move down to the image.
In this, the test heading level 2 items. Check if activate. This test passes if list 3 bullet end of list. Example.com site bar chart showing monthly and total visitors for the first quarter 2014 for sites 1 to 3. Image. You are
okay. So there's my image. So I'm going to move past that to the link to the extended description now.
example end of example. Select image link. Follow for extended description.
All right. When I click on this, it's just a link. So when I click on this, and the publisher can format it whatever they want, but when I click on it, it's going to take me to a new, to the end of the book, and to the top of that page with the, as I mentioned, the image will be alt equals quote, so a presentational image. Just for reference only. And because we've already heard the description, the alt text description, we don't need to hear it again. We really want to just get to that extended description. And then I'll be able to hear the extended description and then jump back exactly to this where I'm linking from, which is the follow to extended description. So I'm going to do that now.
Link. Follow for extended description.
Helps when I press the right key.
Link. Follow description of bar chart group. Heading level 3. Description of bar chart. You select image but heading level 4. Overview.
And you see I just went right past the image, no alt text description, but I'm now going to get to the overview.
The chart shows the website hits for the first quarter of heading level 4. Data. Table 4 columns, 5 rows. Period. Site 1. Row 2 of the 5th. Site 2. Site 3. Row 3 of the 5th of February. Row 4. Row 5 of 5 QTR total.
All right, and I'll move past this.
End of heading level 4. The bar chart link. Navigate back to bar chart image.
So now I'm going to click on that link back. So now I'm done with my extended description. Jump back to the place back in the book.
Link. Follow for extended description.
And my focus is right now back on the link that I was that took me to that extended description. I can then press it again to get back to there.
Description of bar chart.
Right. I'm now at the back of the book. I can use my navigation keys like headings.
Heading level 3. Heading level 4.
I can jump by links. I can press L.
Navigate back to bar chart.
So that's a quick way to get back. Once you're done, you just go back and then you'll just
link.
Activate that. And now you're back in the book. Right. So this is showing the ideal situation. Now I'm going to bring up Thorium that has a little nuance quirk to it, where because of the way that they designed the book and the web view of the book, you have to enter into the focus gets misplaced, and so they added in this hidden underscore underscore link at the top of the page, and you hit tab once to get to that link. And when you activate that link, it'll take you back to the focus, and that's how you can get back. So let me show you that.
Books, Safari, Zoom, Thorium, Thorium, Accessibility Test Extended Descriptions window. End of list. Bar chart showing monthly and example.com site visitor link. Follow for extended description.
So now I'm going to follow it to the end of the book.
Press link.
See, and you're not told anything here, which really it should tell you that. I'm going to hit the tab and get to that.
Link, underscore.
And
You are currently on a link.
And now I can activate that link.
Description of bar chart, group. Heading level 3, description. Heading level 4, overview.
Again, skipping past that presentational image, and now
The chart.
I'm into the description, right? And I can again press L to get to the next link, or H to the next heading.
Heading level 4, data. Heading level 4, presentation. Navigate back to bar chart image.
So now I'm going to navigate back, and the same idea. You'll see that visually you're taken back to the link where you left off, but VoiceOver, if you just started to move around, you'd be at the top of the page, and that's where that tabbing to that underscore hidden link will make things and bring you back to where the focus should be. So let's activate this.
Press link.
And you'll also see this double boxes visually. That's another issue, small bug with Thorium. But if I hit tab now,
Link, underscore. You are currently.
so now I can just activate that link and takes me back to the bottom, because if I don't, I'll start reading from the top of the page.
Link, follow for extended description.
And now I'm back. And then if I move backwards, I'll get
Example.com bar chart showing monthly and.
all right. So these are some of the quirks with it. It's not 100% foolproof, but it is getting better for sure. And with that, we'll go back to
Vital source
oops,
bookshelf. VoiceOver off.
turn off that and go back to our presentation.
So as you're doing that then, Charles, thank you for that. And kudos to you for doing those demos. That's brave, and that went really well. Coming to, you showed a couple of wrinkles there. They didn't seem too much, just to know that technique of hitting tab when you followed a link. Didn't seem so hard. I want to turn to George though. George, you made a comment that you really liked the details approach. What's your kind of impression of that linked approach? Because that seemed to be working pretty well for Charles.
So the linked approach is growing on me. And I think it's because Thorium has implemented this tab enter feature where if the screen reader gets lost on where it's supposed to be, he's implemented this feature that allows you to get to where you're supposed to be. So that's really nice. But that's been the traditional problem with linking back to the exact location, is that the screen readers put you at the top of the file and not at the exact place where you left off. So it doesn't necessarily respect that. You're going to the ID of that element. And call that deep linking. And we see deep linking problems all the time. So that's why I like the details, is that you don't go away and come back. You're just expanding and collapsing. But as the position on deep linking gets resolved, then that becomes a better choice. I will also mention that organizations that produce content specifically for folks that are blind will use the technique. The first one that we saw, where they just put the information right there. But of course, the drawback is that it's always expanded. It's always right there. There's no markup, but it's the most foolproof way of delivering it.
Got you. Now, just before we turn to Evan and Charles, you finish your piece, there's a question from Eileen, specifically what we just saw, which is, so for cross-platform compatibility, it sounds like linking to the end of the book is a good option. George and Charles, and then maybe we'll hear from Evan on that when he has the microphone.
Actually, I think either works really well. Like, I know that the summary details is gaining a lot of support. It's becoming, in all of the browsers, full support there. We're seeing a lot of reading systems start to implement that. The only issue that really we've found is in Apple Books. There's a there is a slight issue that Thorium has right now that they're working on to fix this, again, jumping around, because the content does expand, right? So you had your book, and then all of a sudden this extra information has to show up on the page someplace. So that scrollable view is really key. That has to happen to expand in order to fill up it for all that extra data, and be able to collapse and do it elegantly. So that, yeah, so that therefore right now the linking is probably slightly ahead of the details, but both are close.
Great.
Amazon Kindle, it's always expanded. So the linking would be, for Amazon would probably be the right way to go for the Kindle content until they support the detail summary.
Right.
Great. We've got more questions. We'll hold them back though to the end of the session. So
Yeah.
I'll stop throwing those in and let you carry on with your script.
All right. One minor point, that George has mentioned, with this details being always expanded in some cases, if you were trying to do a test and then this would be your answer key, you wouldn't want that always expanded, right? So you really have to see what reading systems that your customers would be on to make sure that it's working correctly, so that you don't have it fully expanded all the time. But those are issues that hopefully will be fixed shortly. And with that, I'll pass it on to Evan.
Thanks, Charles. That's actually a good segue, because one of our immediate concerns about all of these different techniques is making sure that our customer experience is pretty consistent across all the reading systems that we know they're using. We know that people are reading on Kindles, 6-year-old Kindles, and if this experience is degraded for them for some reason because we've chosen a solution that's not supported there, that's a failure on our part. But expanding on that a little bit, I think the point that has kind of emerged here about the link technique being pretty well supported everywhere is a good one, and it facilitates something that's really important to us, which is personalization and progressive enhancement. I'm going to talk a little bit more about those in a demo here in a minute, but to introduce them, the idea here for personalization is that rather than choosing the solution for the user, who may prefer a summary details, an expandable button, or a link to the end of the book or something like that, you give them an option in their reading system or in the book or somewhere, give them an option to choose how these things are presented to them. It's important in books for things like font size and color, things like that, really helpful. But we can also do it here when we have a really consistent markup and standard markup, where we can present them with the simplest possible thing and then use JavaScript to enhance it based on user preference. And then the other place that we can do that as well is with progressive enhancement. That is a similar technique where this is actually what we do for a lot of our books, where we ship the content with really standard markup, links, that sort of thing that works really well everywhere. And then we ship it with JavaScript that will turn that link into something else. So one of the places we do this right now, for instance, is with key terms, inline key terms that are in the print book. There's a marginal definition or something like that. But in the ebook, we set them as links to a glossary at the end of the page, and clicking that will take you to the glossary. But if your reading system supports JavaScript, it will actually hide the glossary at the end of the page and instead turn the key term into a tooltip so you can see it on demand, an accessible tooltip that's used as an ARIA described by description. The benefit of this means that we can solve this thing at the lowest possible level once, and then ship it to different reading systems and be pretty confident that it's going to work pretty well for all of our customers everywhere. There are some little exceptions to that, and we do some custom builds sometimes of our books where we run that JavaScript before we build it, and then we can ship it out to them with the improved experience in place. That consistent architecture for how you set an image description or how you set anything is really at the core here, though. Having a solution like the ones that George and Charles have presented here, either the link or the details, and having it be really semantic and consistent allows us to do this. If it's inconsistent in any way, the JavaScript will probably fail to enhance it. So that underlying semantics, the underlying semantics of how we mark up our image descriptions is really critical. And that leads to the second point here, which is component architecture, where we break the component up into a single standard implementation that we use everywhere, and it allows our authors of our descriptions to focus on the content. All right, now I'm going to switch over real quick to a demo so you can see some of this in action.
The case of stems
With NVDA, this is one of our books
extended
that has an extended description in it. I've simplified things here though a little bit.
figure. A double bar graph depicts competence, higher ability, and mentoring for male and female students. Graphic.
There's the image with just the alt text, and just below that,
Visited link image description.
I have the image description. This one, I'm actually using it inside of a footnote, so if I click it,
Out of figure landmark footnote heading level 3 overview. The vertical axis shows the values from
this takes me to
landmark image description.
an image descriptions landmark region where all of the image descriptions would be, and then
Footnote.
I can
The vertical axis.
navigate around the descriptions just
The
like
category.
Charles demonstrated before. I think this is
Heading.
not going to go too much into this because
The
it's what Charles demonstrated, but I'm going to really quick go back
Return to figure 3.7. Visited link footnote.
to backlink. So I can
Figure
go back.
graphic. A double bar graph depicts competence.
Doing this on the same page as footnotes means that we can kind of avoid the issue of where focus goes because it stays on the same page. But now I'm going to show over on the left
A
here,
double bar.
I have some examples of
A double
progressive
bar.
enhancement.
Clickable image details check.
So the first one I'm going to show is the image details, which will just basically simulate what happens when the JavaScript runs. This is going to run the JavaScript. Normally this would just happen on page load for any of these.
Checked. On. Image modal. Figure.
And
A double.
what happened there when I click that is the image description link changed to an image description disclosure or a details element.
Graphic. A double bar graph depicts
So the image is the same, that part's the same, but if I go down from that now,
clickable button collapsed image description.
there's the details element, and you heard this one is a little different than VoiceOver. It says clickable button collapsed. It presents it as a button, as George mentioned.
Expanded.
I can click it to expand.
Collapsed.
And collapse.
Expanded. Heading level 3 overview.
And there's the description right in line.
The cat heading. The approximate data depicted in the graph is image description but collapsed.
That's the one that I think is probably the most consistent, and like George said, it allows us to use this
A double bar.
nice technique of progressive disclosure, which is more akin to how sighted people interrogate images, where you choose to look closer. It gives the choice there, which is a little better than the comprehensive description.
Click image not checked. Off.
So the
Image modal.
progressive enhancement is something that a person with dyslexia, who's somebody who can see the image, would really like. Is that what you're thinking, that you can do interesting things with this JavaScript that make it more, just more feature rich.
Yeah, I think so. And it allows the user to make the decision instead of us, because we think we know what's best for the the students, but that's not always the case. And I can't account for every single student. Some students just are used to experiencing things certain ways, and I want to, as much as possible, give them the ability to do that. That's the personalization side of it.
Right.
Yeah. And then I have another very experimental one, since we haven't talked about it here. I'm just going to show it really quickly, which is a modal experience instead of an details.
Checked. On.
So with this one,
Figure clickable view description button.
it turns
Figure clickable view description button.
It turns the image description link into a button that will then open a
Graphic
modal dialog.
image description dialog. Close. Close button. Image description. Button close. Heading level 3 overview. The vertical axis shows the values from 1 to 5.
And this one's nice because it just immediately goes to the description and reads it. This is how accessible dialogues work. But I have no idea how well supported this is anywhere, so this is why I say it's experimental. But it gives you an idea of the types of things that you can do. And this one, I'm really interested for our online learning tools, because while we are doing some of this stuff in books right now, I think it will be really helpful inside of our quizzing tools and our online homework tools, which for students are much more high stakes.
Evan, I like that the image is also here present right beside your description, so that it has a reference for folks with cognitive disabilities. You don't lose that image, right? So it's really great.
It allows you to keep that context. And I like this one too, because when I press escape or when I close the dialog,
Graphic clickable a double bar.
it returns right back to the graphic again.
That's
right.
great. We're loving that experimental
NVDA.
approach. We've got a bunch of questions lined up, so let's see if we can proceed.
We can proceed. And I'm going to hand it off to George here to talk a little bit about conformance requirements.
So the conformance requirements, we know that in WCAG, even at the single A level, text equivalence for graphics is a requirement. When we did the EPUB accessibility spec 1.0, we relaxed that requirement and didn't require extended descriptions. But with the revision of that specification that's going on right now, and we just released the first public working draft, we have said that it is a requirement in the EPUB spec to have extended descriptions where required. And we also know that in the European Accessibility Act, that is in process of being put in place and will be fully implemented by 2025, this will be a requirement. And we are seeing publishers more and more having these extended descriptions in their materials. And it's part of the Born Accessible requirement that GCA is implementing. And it's just wonderful to see these happening. So that's it. Now I think we're ready for questions.
Fantastic. Thank you for making sure we have some time for these. The last of the three techniques we looked at was linking, and so I've grouped together questions from Victoria, Matthew, Dale, and Laura relating to this linked method. So hold these in your heads as I go through them. So for the linked method, are the descriptions kept literally at the end of the book, like as an appendix that a user could flip to, or in a non-linear document, maybe only reachable by links? This is mirrored maybe by the question from Laura, which is asking you to comment on the practice that she has adopted in relation to finding a technique that works everywhere. Laura explains that she uses the link out to a long description, marking the HTML file as non-linear in the spine. And could you comment on that approach? Matthew asks again, where in the EPUB are the extended descriptions typically stored? Are they in a separate document? And is it kind of reachable? And what's the best practice for naming this section, asks Dale. So a whole bunch in there. Let's hear from our panel.
Good questions. So we have said that it should be one file per description because of this problem of getting exactly to the correct spot when linking. So one file, one description. You should provide a reproduce the image. So that's easy. You're not duplicating the image. You're just reproducing the link to the image so you can see the image and hear the description at the same time. And we've thought of this at the end of the book, and it would be certainly possible to create a section, an appendix, and good question on the name of these things, but it would be probably something like a collection of long descriptions. And and then I would order them as they appear in the book. And so you could go through them one at a time, navigating from the appendix to view them. That's my take on that approach. And you'd see the image and have the description. So it would be standalone, useful as a standalone item for folks. So that's my opinion on it. Charles?
So George, that's different maybe then to what Laura was describing, because it sounded like that would only be discoverable from the image itself. You see the collection being something that the reader could browse through.
Then you'd have to have that appendix in the navigation document so that it'd be part of the book that you could get to.
Right.
Interesting. Charles, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, you could, you could make it non-linear and then only link from there if it wasn't important. But I think being able to get a list of them all is probably the right approach. Although by doing that, if they are, you might want to then include the alt text descriptions, right? Because if it's standalone, you might not have got there from the image itself. So we may want to rethink our guidelines on that so that it would become a self-contained unit that you could get to from the navigation document and browse independently of finding them in the book. So and naming, yeah, definitely each of them would be a separate file. So having a title on that's descriptive so that this is from like figure 2.5 or what have you, or some other identifiable information would be a good thing to do.
Great, thanks for that, Charles. I remember in an earlier session when we had the publishers face off, what came through from that was test with users. Whatever techniques you come out, try them with users. Evan, what's your experience with this approach?
Yeah, I think we approach this the same way we do with any question of whether or not something should be an endnote or a footnote, which is an editorial decision a lot of the time based on the importance of it in the document. So if it's fairly important and something we want the student to be able to discover easily, we put it as a footnote at the bottom of the document rather than an endnote, which is slightly harder to get to and return from. And that's why in my demo, I was using footnotes there in a landmark region that I'm calling image descriptions. On the question also of what to call it, we avoid long description or extended description because it's not clear to everyone what it would be a description of. It needs the word image in there in order to be comprehensible for everyone. And extended, well, I like extended description. It does feel a little technical to me. But my inclination right now is to put these things as footnotes. I think they're good arguments for both, though.
Great. Thank you for that. Next question is, we've seen these demos in the browser and in EPUB. What about other digital publication formats where extended descriptions are required? Last time, Valerie was talking about Word, for example. Which of these techniques might be appropriate in a format such as Word?
So I would think that the idea of bookmarking and then being able to go at the end of the Word document and have a list of these, but the trick would be then to get back. So the whole linking back and forth could be problematic potentially in Microsoft Word. It's a little clunky. I don't know, George, do you have any other ideas?
Well, I think if you're providing a Word document to somebody, it's not for the mainstream. It's an accommodation that you're doing, and I would put it right after the image, or if you need the information before you do the quiz or whatever it is, then before. But I would put it right there. With, just maybe put a heading in there that this is the long description or extended description. The reason we pick extended description is in the early days of the web, long descriptions were an attribute and they fell out of favor and are now deprecated. So we don't want to confuse people. And so we use the term extended description because
Great,
of
thank
that
you.
legacy.
Well, that begins to answer the question from Bruce. Maybe George, you can take this. Does the term extended description have a formal definition? Is it essentially the same as the old HTML long desk element?
Conceptually, it's the same. It's the provision of more information than is delivered in the alt text. So the idea is the same, but there's a lot more implementations. And in the old days with the long LONG-DESC attribute, only AT could get at it because it was invisible to mainstream users. But we're finding that these long descriptions, extended descriptions, are very helpful to a wide range of people, not just people who are blind. So yeah, it's being used more and more for other things in HTML.
Great. The last question I think we have time for is coming your way, Charles. Will asks, can the content be read without expanding the button? So that's to the detail summary approach.
Yeah, not at this time. No, you would have to expand it to read it. Like you saw when I moved past the unexpanded, it just went to the next set of content, which is by design. You wouldn't want it to start to read it. The read aloud functionality will do the same thing. So that's where you would probably want to have something to open up all of those by personal preference settings that Evan was talking about, to potentially open those first before you start that read aloud.
So you'd need to open it, you need to expand it, and this is a feature, not a bug. Is that right?
Correct. Yep.
Great.
Yeah,
Super.
and I would say with the read aloud function, there'd be an option. Do you want to read extended descriptions automatically or not? Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, we're coming to the end of this session. Once again, thank you to George, Charles, and Evan for sharing great information and advice. As I mentioned in the introduction, the previous webinars are all available on the DAISY website, and this includes the previous webinars on what to put into your alt text and extended descriptions. So do head there to check out the back catalogue. Our next webinar will be on March the 10th and is titled Word Document Accessibility 101. Microsoft Word is one of the world's most widely used applications for originating content globally. People use Word to create all types of content, from business-related documents, academic coursework at all levels, and even developing manuscripts for publication. Over time, Microsoft Word has become a powerful and rich tool, but the real power comes when it's used to create content which makes the most of the built-in accessibility features, enabling direct access by people with print disabilities. Accessible Word documents also unlock the potential for materials to be easily converted to many other formats, including accessible EPUB, HTML, DAISY, and PDF. Microsoft Word accessibility is very powerful, but it doesn't have to be complex. This webinar will introduce the basic concepts of Microsoft Word accessibility. Find out more at daisy.org/webinars, where you can also sign up for the webinar announcements mailing list. I hope you'll join us again soon. In the meantime, thank you for your time. Stay safe and well, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Goodbye.